All right, so as October is Estate Planning Awareness Month, we'll be focusing on estate planning for young adults. This session is meant to be informational and educational. We are not estate planning attorneys, nor even close to being experts in all things end of life. What our team does have is experience with over 2,000 participants approaching their estate planning journey. From this, we are able to identify the state of the typical household beginning their journey, the hurdles they encounter, and how the very basics can get them started in protecting their assets, wishes, and loved ones. We won't be diving into the specific legal components of the estate plan, as you are financial professionals with this knowledge, and every situation will be individual to the household. Rather, we will review what applies to participants and how to approach the conversation. I'll be presenting this session with you, and the rest of the team will be supporting along the way. Here is what today's menu holds. We all will explore why we don't plan, why it's important for young adults, and what happens if we don't do it. We will review the basic components most frequently missing and needed by the demographic, and we reviewed ways to be empathetic and encouraging when approaching these topics with your households. While this session is aimed at the experiences and motivations of Millennial and Gen Z age groups, you're invited to take moments to consider your estate planning status, what it took to complete, and how taking each step felt. This will bring you closer to their perspective and guide your empathetic conversations. We do have scenarios planned and prepped for the end for conversation. They're typical generic participant situations. You can choose to network, you can choose to continue this conversation with those scenarios, or you can choose to hop into a room and talk about third decade struggles and issues that you might be having. So this topic of estate planning is important at any age. It's a sensitive one for most because it covers more than just what happens to our financial assets. Estate planning also encompasses control over important decisions around healthcare, securing digital and social assets, caring for minor children, and considering our mortality and legacy. What we think and feel about it evolves as we process through life's events. Nearly 2/3 of Americans think that having a will is important, but only 32% actually have one. This is a 6% decline from 2023, the first decrease in rates since 2020. Encouragingly, young adults in the 18 to 34 age group are the only group that have not seen a decline since 2020. Still, only about 24% of this age group will have a will. There are several reasons why people avoid approaching completing their estate plans. Some reasons are personal, while most simply lack knowledge. The estate planning process feels intimidating, which makes it unapproachable. On this list, we find the most common barriers for participants completing estate planning to the degree that it fits their situation is they're not even sure where to start. They're not sure why it might be important, or they're intentionally avoiding it. Also high on the list is thinking that they don't have enough assets to consider any aspect of estate planning. The number one asset everyone forgets to consider in estate planning is themselves. Your net worth doesn't need to be $1 million in order to ensure healthcare and last wishes are addressed. When they believe they have no one to survive them, they can often be prompted to consider supporting a community or charitable organization they find important. They are also unaware that they can choose to make a friend a beneficiary. There are also feelings that the process can take too much time, that it can be long and drawn out, or cost too much to engage attorneys. These perspectives exist even if they are unfamiliar with the specific steps required. By starting small, we can help them overcome their hesitations. Age, income, race, education, religion, culture, and other factors obviously influence estate planning. Studies find that Black individuals are less likely than white individuals to have a will, and Hispanic individuals are least likely of these three groups to have a will. 32% of men have estate plans versus 23% of women. Those with lower income are twice as likely as those with higher income to believe they don't have enough assets for an estate plan. College graduates are more likely than non-college graduates to have a plan. Some religions actually have laws regarding inheritance and the legal process that must be followed. This could involve restrictions regarding estate distribution, arbitration, dispute resolution, and using a living will or advanced directive documents or funeral arrangements. Cultural ties to a person's home country may lessen with each successive generation, but it is still important to consider. How a first-generation immigrant participant and a US-born participant approaches estate planning will be different. Also, knowledge and experience with different laws affect planning. In most East Asian countries, medical decisions are handled informally by family members, especially for elderly or ill patients. However, lack of a durable power of attorney and healthcare directives in the US can be problematic. And, of course, what a participant has experienced with money will affect how they approach estate planning. Do they want to protect themselves from negative situations they witnessed or experienced? This could be proactive or avoidance behaviors creating. Your scope of engagement as a mentor does not encompass being an expert in all religions and cultural standards and expectations or systemic barriers. Your scope does involve understanding the personal barriers that your participant may have in approaching this process. You'll find by asking how the participant's family and network approaches end-of-life planning will give you insight into their values. When participants are thinking about their estate planning process before meeting with you, we find it's for a few very specific reasons. The first of which everyone can benefit from being reminded of is incapacitation is unpredictable. Participants who have recently experienced the death of a close friend or family member, or perhaps even suffered a major personal injury, are acutely aware of this. Reminding participants who are in high-risk jobs or who have higher risk hobbies of this fact can be a prompting factor as well. Young adults are also in the position to build multi-generational wealth, and they know it. There is an estimated $70 trillion set to transfer in the next 2 decades. For those who are not receiving an inheritance, they equally recognize that they can be the ones to start building this legacy for their family, and they take it very seriously. The typical first-time homebuyer in 2021 was about 33 years old, and in 2023, it was 35 years old. As part of their asset building, home ownership feels out of reach for many. In addition to the systemic racial barriers in home ownership, nearly half of young adults are concerned the current housing crisis will impact their ability to purchase a home and include it in their estate plan. So they are seeking alternative ways to build legacy, including life insurance, investments, and savings. Millennials value stability and making thoughtful decisions. Those who approach estate planning through the lens of stability recognize it as a powerful tool. They continue to learn and build the positive habits that will help them reach their full potential. Fidelity has most recently reported that approximately 45% of all new accounts opened with them were done so by those between the ages of 18 and 35. Conversely, approximately 70% of those entering the third decade program do not have or are unaware of a Roth IRA. Your support at every level of awareness helps them build their habits. They are also acutely aware of the need to protect their surviving loved ones. Every household will have an individual need. There are traditional and non-traditional family arrangements to consider, with laws differing by state. It's also incredibly important to bring awareness for those who are in the US on temporary visas or those traveling abroad frequently to have their affairs in order. Further, young adults are also starting to consider the guardianship and financial well-being of their pets. Remember, you are starting with them small. You are starting now, and you will build that lifetime of habit for the estate planning process. When we don't make advanced arrangements for ourselves, our loved ones, and our belongings, nothing good ever comes from it. Without a plan, assets may not be distributed as intended, the burden on survivors increases, and opportunities for supporting charitable passions are missed. Probate is a legal process that involves establishing the will's validity, distributing assets, paying debts, and considering taxes. The probate process can take on average 6 months to a year, but can last even longer with complications. Probate can be avoided in most states with joint ownership of assets, a revocable living trust, and designating beneficiaries. Probate costs an estimated 5 to 10% of an estate's value. The lower the net worth of an estate, the more impactful it could be on the survivor's financial support. Undue financial and emotional burdens could also accompany this already difficult time for survivors. No one wants to think about the complications that could arise with guardianship of minor children or pets, but it's a vital component of the plan. It can be helpful to relate a personal experience or a story of how estate planning was beneficial to you. If you haven't personally experienced an event, relating what you have read or listened to in a podcast might also help them see the situation differently. When speaking to your participants, tailoring your conversation to what is most important to them at that specific time will help them understand the potential consequences of not taking action on their estate planning needs. An easy topic to slide into is their net worth, as you cover that in the elements review. Nearly 40% of individuals with an estate plan stated that the reason for neglecting planning was that they felt that they lacked assets required. The higher one's net worth is, the greater the financial impact an estate plan will have. But that doesn't mean that having a lower net worth makes it any less important. The average participant is currently graduating the program with a net worth of about $56,000. This puts them ahead of many of their peers in this age range. This is also a prime bracket that wants to seek incorporating charitable giving into their budgets and estate planning. Interestingly, the Trust and Will 2023 annual millennial estate planning study found the lower a young adult's net worth is, the more likely they are to leave a portion of their assets to a charitable cause. The average gift was found to be approximately $22,257. The top 3 charities designated for those with net worths less than $50,000 were Planned Parenthood, followed by St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and the Trevor Project, which provides crisis support for LGBTQIA+ youth. While it's important to include the needs of surviving loved ones in conversation, sometimes the tone can be a little more approachable when we include community passions as well as loved ones. So if your participant doesn't initially come to you ready, when do they typically start estate planning? For many participants, they are at the time of their life where several events will likely be changing to the point of requiring estate planning attention. From moving out of their family home, committing to a partner, adding children, moving to a different state, or simply landing their dream career that comes with an employee-sponsored retirement plan. This 2023 chart shows the top events that millennials have indicated would prompt them to seriously consider estate planning components. It is, however, important to keep in mind that there are individuals resistant to estate planning during their entire relationship with you. The reality is that nearly 1 in 4 Americans say nothing will motivate them to get a will. Supporting and educating is your role, and sometimes this means you won't see the product of your labor during the course of your engagement. We can only be confident that the education has been provided for when they do become ready to engage it. The process of estate planning is ongoing and ever evolving. It is meant to be visited regularly and adjusted as needed, preferably without delay in the presence of a life event. Once established, it's good practice to add it to the financial wellness checklist every 3 to 5 years. Beneficiaries and guardianship will be the 2 most frequently edited components. We have created a resource for participants outlining the potential life events for consideration that will be included in the delivery of the recording. Estate planning is one of the last topics discussed in the 3rd decade course curriculum. However, we find that some of the components and language are so foreign to the participants that they fail to comprehend how it might apply to them or what pieces actually are. This often prevents them from diving deeper into the materials provided for self-study. Your patience, in addition to sensitivity, is approaching the process is key. The majority of participants lack basic estate planning components, such as designating beneficiaries and establishing healthcare directives. We've created a checklist also of 6 essential documents everyone should have starting out. This will also be outlined in the next couple of slides. Beyond the basics, there is a need for more education on critical topics like renter's insurance, disability insurance, and when it applies, life insurance. These 2 are foundational protections to consider as part of the estate planning process. The financial profile is key for this discussion. It has an estate taxes and insurance section in the student details tab. You will approach the need for these different perspective protections on an individual basis. Even when the participant has a heavy list of financial goals that feel more important to them than estate planning, sometimes adding in one component can make for an easy win. We can make them aware that there are several components they will need to complete their estate plan, but can make the next step easy, like ensure all documents have transfer on death or beneficiaries designated. Estate planning doesn't have to be complicated or overwhelming. With the 3 formalized meetings you have, behind on my slide here, with the 3 formalized meetings you have scheduled to your participants, you can slowly build on each layer with every meeting. Not only does it focus on the habits of moving towards achievement, but helps instill estate planning as a habit. Breaking it up can look something like the following. At the discovery meeting, the top 3 topics to target are are ensuring transfer on death or beneficiaries are designated for all accounts, setting up a durable power of attorney, and enacting healthcare directives. A durable financial power of attorney and healthcare directives are springing documents, meaning that they come to life during a moment of incapacitation or other defined events. This can be very important for participants to know, especially if they've experienced or witnessed financial predation by family members. Helping participants understand that day-to-day finances are kept up as they recover from the incapacitation designated event can make a financial POA more approachable. There are 3 prongs to the healthcare directive: the HIPAA authorization form that covers the medical records for information between staff and can be state specific, as well as occasionally facility specific. The living will specifies the medical care that is to be received in the event of terminal illness or unconsciousness. And the healthcare POA designates a person rather than a stranger to make healthcare decisions in accordance with stated wishes. 53% of millennials reported wanting to receive advanced healthcare only if it outweighed the burdens, as compared to 60% of older generations who wanted to receive advanced healthcare to improve their condition. Also of note, approximately 81% of millennials included indicated rather that they wanted to be organ donors, but only about 31% actually signed up to do so. When you hear their values and their goals, you can make these documents more relevant and approachable. If the participant leaves the program with no other piece of the estate plan in place, these are the things that we would put the most weight in. If the household has minor children, also for the discovery meeting is to establish guardianship. It should go without saying it is a paramount that the plan of guardianship be established earlier rather than later. Also, top of focus for an unmarried couple would be setting up joint tenancy of right to survivorship and/or a cohabitation agreement for shared property. A cohabitation agreement can be used together with a will to support the wishes and distribution of assets. The next highest priority on the list might be disability insurance. This is especially important for the participant if they do not have a support network to depend on during the event of an injury. Depending on the financial and life situation of the individual, you might also find yourself starting to talk about starting a living will and testament and/or revocable trust. It's important to seek legal advice for state-specific situations. Basic estate planning will help participants feel more in control of events that can be unpredictable. You'll indicate in your discovery meeting notes as to the status of your estate planning conversation and pick it back up at progress meeting. Establishing an estate plan is high on the procrastination list. Therefore, you might find nothing was completed from the discovery meeting. Support the direction the participant is willing to go. Do you need more information? Are you just not really ready to address it? Or are they resolutely unwilling to complete it? The accounts for guardianship for minors is also important. You might find that they completed their healthcare directives but avoided guardianship consideration. The progress made from other financial goals throughout the past year will hopefully have prompted more emotional space for parents to address these components in the priority of the next year. Millennials and Gen Z are also putting a high priority on the care of their pets. While you cannot leave assets directly to an animal, you can appoint a caretaker and set up a trust that would cover the financial needs of that animal. It might also be a good time to review and educate participants more on the potential need for term life insurance, considering more than just minor children or a partner. Does the participants have parents or family members that rely heavily on their financial contributions? If so, life insurance might be an important addition. For those who are on temporary stay in the US or regularly send money to family in their home country, life insurance might be something they've never thought about but would consider beneficial. In addition to traditional considerations, the burial destination is also important for someone, as the cost of returning to a home country will fall on the survivors. Life insurance can help protect against unforeseen final costs for everyone whose assets aren't enough. It's also a good time to review the need for a will or revocable trust. The more complex a family structure, the more specific desire for assets to be distributed, probably the better it is to seek framework of a will or revocable trust. Complex family structures might include blended families, dependents with special needs, domestic partners, and same-sex partnerships. The use of revocable trust can not only potentially help to avoid probate, but can also help keep final wishes and beneficiaries private. This is because they are not part of the public record per se. The final progress meeting is the last time that you will meet with your participant. You will continue to discuss the uncompleted estate planning tasks in your one-page plan. It's also a good time to set them up on a path for establishing an even more emotional and potentially time-consuming component of final arrangements. Approaching these topics from the perspective of giving to their loved ones rather than making it about them in their end of life is a way to appeal to some. Others might find comfort in the sense of control that the estate planning brings. Again, the way you approach and address the topic will be individual to the household. One of those final arrangement components is the digital legacy. This generation is the first digitally native generation. Millennials are unique estate planning needs and they're around their digital legacy. This encompasses computers and mobile devices, cloud storage, and other digital media assets. They are different from traditional assets because they are often subject to terms of agreements and federal laws. The younger generation increasingly considering their digital legacy to be important. They are 29% more likely than generations older to want email, direct messages, and text to be kept private from their family, while being 2 times as likely to want their social media presence preserved or memorialized. There are a variety of ways of passing on digital legacy. Some platforms like Apple and Google for sure provide specific avenues for after-death planning, but there's not a standardization across platforms. Participants will need to review their various accounts to see which offer similar legacy features. Alternatively, you can engage a digital inheritance service, which is offered for free, but has very limited services or expanded services for hundreds of dollars later. They can also DIY it by utilizing a password manager. The master password can be given to the executor to help transfer accounts and information. Username, password, and notes can be added for each account or asset. Adding a digital legacy executor and specific wishes to the will is an important step. Digital legacy instructions alone are not legally binding. One of the pieces to complete, once the pieces are complete, you need to next identify how you're going to get these documents. The two options will be to do it themselves or seek legal support. Regardless of whether a self-serve online service or attorney is utilized, there are some prep work involved. Having a list of important people, assets, debt, and final arrangements listed before beginning can make the process faster. The end-of-life planning resource will link to a checklist. Part of the prep includes speaking with their partner, family, or other designated individuals. And the consideration of poor guardianship, speaking to those they intend to involve is crucial. Setting up an estate plan is complicated. That's why you're here. Having specific answers for your participant situation is outside the mentoring scope of engagement. You'll educate them on the general features that are important to them, and you'll refer them to local, state, bar, and trust association for specific consideration and inheritance rules. One piece to remember when determining residency for specific considerations is that individual state qualifiers rather than a listed address is key in establishing that determination. This is important to remember for the digital nomads that you work with and for those who have recently moved out of state or country. When choosing self-serve, it's important to ensure the platform is legitimate and avoid those that will attempt to sell unnecessary items. There are a few different trusted online self-service services in the resources. One of our favorite is to recommend Cake. Found at joincake.com, it was founded by MIT and Harvard alumni. It's free, comprehensive, educational, with step-by-step guides that direct to state-specific documents, provides optional legal support, and has an online vault to maintain completed documents. Several of the services can be completed at no charge. Fees for services that are required are reasonable. For most participants, self-serve will accomplish what's needed. For more complex and nuanced situations, seeking an attorney will be most beneficial. These services can be engaged by a flat fee, by the hour, or sold in package levels. Some self-serve platforms have the option to engage legal professionals at different points in its creation. You can encourage the participant to review their employee benefits package as well to see if such a service is offered at reduced or no cost. The last piece to complete is including the signature and witnessing of their documents and making copies. There's no single correct approach to sharing copies of the estate plan. It can be provided to a trusted friend, financial advisor, or CPA, or legal representative. The most common mistakes in completing the estate plan, regardless of whether it's self-serve or attorney, are the same. The top three include not being current, forgetting to list assets, and leaving out beneficiaries. So we have touched on a few ways to approach estate planning with your households throughout this session. As their mentor, you are a trusted source for them to help get their estate planning process started. Few people are open to speaking about the estate planning process with family or friends. And we discussed that the most difficult topics to approach are end-of-life arrangements and guardianship for their children or pets. You become a neutral space that can allow them to approach it in a factual and open way. It can feel like a daunting task, especially if they are starting with no knowledge on the subject, services, or process. You play a pivotal role in helping provide reminders at annual meetings. You help them acknowledge this life stages and account for how those events relate to estate planning. Rather than aiming for a totally complete estate plan, try to help them achieve one item from the list at a time. We are more likely to take action when we see how something applies to our situation, specifically in the moment. So take advantage of when they share their values and motivations. The key, as we've hinted throughout this session, will be to break it down into relevant, manageable, approachable steps. Studies show on average it takes 1 to 5 years of simply thinking about an estate plan before action begins. Therefore, don't be surprised if you find your participants not making much progress at all throughout their relationship with you. Starting that process of thought is a crucial first step. Your mentorship in this area is yet another way you are changing financial futures forever by having them start now. Nothing else really? Okay, so we will jump into the scenarios then, hopefully stretch our brain a little bit. So the first one that we have is participants being at different states of readiness. So partner one, we're experiencing that they are incredibly eager, very excited to start this estate planning process. They get, however you get, that it's important, and they want to focus on protecting their partner because they saw their mom go through the tragic experience of losing her partner and the struggle that she went through and maintaining their lifestyle and bringing that back up to par. So this partner one is incredibly ready to go. They've got everything ready. Partner two doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Basically shuts down every time the communication is tried to be had, and then becomes incredibly emotional, not only defensive, but sometimes even angry when the participant one tries to continue the conversation. So what do we think would be strategies to help these individuals get on the same page? So what are factors that we can discuss or strategies to help this blended family? Next one is LGBTQIA or non-traditional families. So same-sex marriages or domestic partnerships where they choose not to get married, which we are increasingly seeing, regardless of whether they're same-sex or heterosexual. They are avoiding or not choosing to get married for a variety of reasons. Transgender or transitioning partners, those relationships that have multiple partners, or those families with adopted, non-biological, or stepchildren. What are strategies and considerations for these ones?
Okay, so for our next scenario, we have, it is one of the cases that probably a lot of us have seen with our participants. Is quite generic and quite common. It is a committed heterosexual couple that they decided that they don't want to get married. It can be because they want to get financial aid. They do want to maybe save a little bit of money on a student loan repayment, or maybe they had difficult childhood experiences and trauma from divorcing parents or ugly divorces. So they say, yes, we're committed, but no, we don't want to sign the paper. So in this particular scenario, they own a house, they have 2 vehicles, they also have a boat. They have individual retirement accounts and in sports or retirement plans. One of them has student loans. So for estate planning purposes, what would be on the high end of the list to consider for the property? These are the strategies that we have determined that should be taken in consideration. One of those is a cohabitation agreement, regardless of a domestic partnership registered or not registered. So there are going to be things that domestic partners don't have the same coverage of the same privileges and rights as married couples. So the best way to go is with a cohabitation agreement that is also known as a domestic partnership agreement. It's similar to a prenuptial agreement. So if you don't want to get married, you can just create a cohabitation agreement where you're going to establish rights and also responsibilities of that relationship that can include property division of debts. For example, if you're going to buy a house together, what's going to be like the way that we're going to get the mortgage, who's going to pay what, and a lot of times also, for instance, what's going to happen if that relationship ends. One common scenario that I've seen in a lot of participants is that a partner moves to the owner of the house and they pay rent to their significant other. So one partner owns the house and then the other one goes and lives with them. So in order to kind of do a 50-50 or help with the living expenses, they pay rent that goes to paying the mortgage. But a lot of times they don't realize that, well, if you don't have a written agreement, what's going to happen with the division of assets? They might have a little bit of a say or try to claim that money that has been invested for improving the property. Another thing is the joint ownership with the right of tenancy. That is that the assets automatically pass to the surviving partner. So in the case of the house, the vehicles, the boat, everything will have to go based on their intentions, putting the beneficiary designations on every account. That would be a way of avoiding probate and making sure that that money goes to the intended partner. Having a will for each, especially like we just covered the blended family scenario where it was intended to be for married couples, but a lot of times there is also unmarried couples with the registered or unregistered partnership that have kids or bring kids from previous marriages. So making sure that all those documents are taken care of, conversations about who's going to support that child's college education. Is there going to be a college fund, a 529, or is there, for instance, even conversations about financial support from the other parent? It's important to have in place, making sure that the life insurance policy is going to, again, cover those situations, and addressing the mortgage, what's going to happen with the assets if either partner dies or maybe just the relationship ends. And then for the last slide, we have 4 types of trust that we find that a will or a revocable living trust is sufficient for most of our participants. However, each participant's needs are going to require different recommendations or are going to be specific for their scenario. There is no like one shoe fits all. A testamentary trust is created when the will is in probate. These trusts might be useful for large estates, or if there is a risk of a partnership dissolving or maybe bankruptcy. The next one will be a tax planning trust. That's what the title indicates. It's a strategy to minimize tax liabilities, protect assets, and also to manage wealth distribution. Again, it is optimal with larger estates. Participants with minor children, parents, or other family members under their care who have disability will need a special needs trust that will allow that loved one to continue receiving government benefits while also inheriting their assets. The easiest estate planning option for participants to complete will likely be a will. As a cohabitation agreement, if it's pertaining to the situation, can definitely supplement that will for the married partnerships. And participants might also find a revocable trust beneficial as it acts similar to a will, and it can help definitely avoid probate. And that concludes our scenarios. Does anyone have any questions? Would like to add something? Maybe we miss an important consideration.
The only thing I would add is just the I think it was from the last slide. It said like supplementing like income for especially for families that for partners that don't get married, they're not entitled to like their spouse's social security and sometimes their pensions. So if they have those things and that's like a long-term plan, that's something to consider is if their income would greatly decrease due to the death of their partner.
If there are no further questions, I believe then this concludes today's Nibble Network.